Welcome to Good Grief, the podcast where resilience meets reality. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Malone. In this podcast, we delve deep into the stories of individuals who've triumphed over tragedy, adversity, and trauma. In every episode, we bring you raw and honest narratives from guests who faced life's most challenging moments head on. Through candid conversations, they share their journeys of resilience, shedding light on the strategies, mindset shifts, and support systems that empowered them to rise above their darkest hours. Join us as we explore the profound depths of human resilience and discover how, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and yes, good grief. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me for this episode today. My guest, due to this being a very sensitive topic, has a pseudonym, so we're going to call her Joan. She is an IT professional and the oldest of three siblings. And we're going to talk today about her sister's death and kind of how that transpired and her reaction to it and kind of what she's been dealing with since all that happened. So, Joan, thank you for joining me.
Oh, happy to be here.
So tell us a bit about, if you want to kind of start with, how was your relationship with your sisters you're growing up? So if you were oldest, obviously she was younger than you. So you were in her life the whole time.
She is the middle child of three. She was 2 years younger than me. And then my brother is almost 11 years younger than me. So, but yeah, it was, our relationship was contentious, I would say. She was a very, people would use the word emotional. And yeah, we used to joke that she could cry on command and, but had a flair for the dramatic, very creative, very intelligent, a brilliant writer, very smart, very bubbly. She was involved in, school plays. She was a social butterfly, whereas I really wasn't. And then even into adulthood, she was very kind of the life of the party, liked to be the center of attention, just very uninhibited in a lot of ways. But the relationship between the two of us was difficult. She first, and in retrospect, reading some of her journals after she passed away, she literally, according to her writings, she hated me. Felt like, oh yeah, continue, always maintain that I was the favorite, and I can tell you right now, my parents appreciated each of their children for who they were, what they brought, and there was never any favoritism that I ever saw. But it just, I'm not going to negate what her feelings may have been, but those were the feelings that she conveyed. Just she could get pretty nasty at times with her words. She had a very sharp tongue. And so were we super close? No. And I'll be pretty upfront about that. But at the end of the day, she was still my little sister. And I've been there, she went through a pretty difficult divorce. I want to say, 2010. And although her former husband, I still think the world of him because he was a very patient, loving man. But my sister's needs and desires took her in other directions. And, so that was that.
Yeah. I know I have an older sister that it's a very different lifestyle than I do, and I have a hard time sometimes getting my mind wrapped around that. But hers is more due to drugs and all the kinds of things. But you mentioned, I know that your sister's death was sudden and disturbing. So can you want to share what you're comfortable with sharing about what happened?
Yeah, April 2nd of 2020. So of course, right when all the the upheaval with COVID. About 8:00 at night, I'm just watching TV with my husband, relaxing, and I get a call from my nephew, who at the time was, I want to say 20. And he said, Auntie, are you sitting down? And I said, what's going on? And he said, Auntie, you need to be sitting down. He was very calm, but I knew something was up. And I said, okay, what's going on? He says, Mom is dead. And I'm, what? And he told me, um, he told me that he had gotten a call from, and he lives in another state, as does his brother. They were living with their dad. Um, and he just said that, he got a call from the police department, and here's the name and number of the detective. Um, and he didn't know really what happened or anything like that. And I said, okay. And his brother, who was 17 at the time, was living with, my sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I immediately picked my jaw up off the floor. Um, still pretty much in shock. I mean, she was only 52 years old, and in good health from as much as I knew. And I called the detective and said that she was, in a hotel room with her boyfriend, who I knew was an attorney and married. Um, and that they were, getting their arms around what happened. They said she had a seizure. And and they said, her 17-year-old son is here. They were at her apartment. And I said, we'll be right down. So my husband and I just, got in the car, drove almost an hour. Met the detectives at my sister's apartment, and they proceeded to tell me, and this is the disturbing part, that my sister was in a hotel room with her boyfriend. He called EMS, and he asked me. He said, "Did your sister do drugs?" And I said, "Well, she enjoyed a glass of wine, and she occasionally smoked weed." I said, "But other than that, no, she was a professional woman. In fact, had just started a position with a consulting firm as a project manager working in facilities. And I mean, she was a very smart woman. I mean, very professional, well regarded. So all of this just knocked me off my feet." And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, um, she did something." He said, "Do you know what booty bumping is?" And I said, "No." And he proceeded to educate me, about the fact that she apparently dissolved crystal meth in water and injected it with a syringe into her rectum, not once, but twice. After the second time, she and her boyfriend were uh, having sex, and she had a seizure, and he apparently tried to revive her, and to no avail. And she was DOA when, EMS showed up at the hotel.
Oh,
So, yeah, that was a lot to take in. I mean, I knew that my sister, from about 2012, as far as I can piece together after kind of the post-mortem on all of this, that was a whole thing in itself. But I knew she had been involved with what she referred to as the sex positive community, meaning she had gotten involved in BDSM. Um, and at the at that moment, I hadn't realized how deep she had gotten into it. Yeah. So then, of course, I have to figure out how I'm going to tell my parents, who at the time were in their late 70s. They're still both very much alive and healthy. I had to figure out how to tell them that their middle child died, and this is how she died. Which, the hour car trip home with my nephew just in the back seat, just speechless and doing nothing but playing a game on his phone. Yeah. So trying to attend to his needs, although really all he wanted to do was sleep. And I think that was his way of escaping. But also knowing that, okay, this is how your little sister died. Um, and that there was a pending potential criminal investigation.
Okay.
And then, yeah, having to break that news to my parents. I called them. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I told my father. He answered. I talked to him first. And then I could hear him telling my mother in the background. And that's a sound I don't ever want to hear again.
Yeah. Were you was her children, or especially the 17-year-old, present when the police were telling you this whole story, or did you have to give them that information?
He knew that she died. He did not know how, and I don't know to this day if he truly knows how. To this day, I don't know how much of her lifestyle he was exposed to, being, sharing an apartment with her. I I do know that she would bring strangers home and do what they did in her bedroom, and he'd be in his room on video games. I mean, at the time, he was so incredibly addicted to
Oh,
gaming, online gaming, all that. Yeah. And honestly, I think that just kind of made it easier for her to pursue her lifestyle.
right.
But yeah, he to my knowledge, he did not know. He had that night, well, all that day, she had died apparently about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So she was having a tryst with her boyfriend at a local hotel that apparently they frequented. And prior to her passing, they were expecting others to show up because she was into gangbangs and making money from it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh
That's
yes. Oh yes. I mean it was kind of interesting because I guess, Christine, I guess what I'm still struggling with and I still feel a lot of resentment and anger about is, number one, I don't feel like, I mean, I got counseling after this all happened, of course, but I my parents live out of state. Her oldest child lives out of state, and so I was the only relative in the same state. And being the oldest, only children, I mean, oldest children will understand this. You kind of feel a responsibility.
sure.
There was no way that I wanted my parents to have to pick up the pieces.
Right, right.
She had no estate planning. There was no estate planning, no will, no nothing. So I, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, I took it upon myself to take care of the contents of her apartment, contact the landlord, get tell them what happened, try to dispose of some of her stuff or give away, which not that easy during COVID, with
Yes.
COVID doll,
Yes.
you know, re- return her car to the dealership. I mean, it's just all those logistical things, all the things that have to happen, contacting a funeral home, making arrangements for her body, making sure the ashes I sent them back to my parents out of state, you know, uh, contacting her employer. She was a remote employee, so I had to bring back all of her stuff to her boss. At the same time, people say, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" And it's a very surreal kind of experience when you don't really feel comfortable talking about what happened.
Hmm. Yep.
You know all of the dirty details, but it's not like you can just tell everybody who asks what happened. You can't really be truthful about that. I mean, I suffice to say that with closer friends, things that I will tell them that she died of an overdose, unintentional. It was an experimentation thing, which it was.
Hmm.
It was chemsex she was into. And I just tell them she was involved in the much darker part of an alternative lifestyle. that seems to suffice most times. I mean, my mother still tells people that she had a heart attack. So,
Right.
I mean, and they never got counseling. I have urged and urged and urged them to, and they never have.
Yeah.
So every year on her birthday, every year on the anniversary of her death, I mean, that whole week, it's just agony, for my mother and my father. They've got each other, but at the same time, as you surely know, there's a hole there that'll never be filled. And at the same time, having that knowledge of the how,
Right.
um, it's very hard. And my grieving, I mean, to this day, I'm going to be really honest. To this day, I have not shed a tear. I've shed tears for my parents and the hell they've gone through. Um, I have not I have not been able to summon the tears. And I'm thinking it's still a lot of simmering anger.
Yeah.
Because, to make things worse, this was a woman who, again, in her writings, come to find out she hated me.
Yeah.
So this is like, that whole topic is when grief is hard to find. And that's where I've been for 5 years
Yes.
is,
One thing I wanted to get to with you is this whole idea of anger. Now, so I'm putting myself in your shoes and thinking a couple things. First of all, that I have to be the one to tell my parents, right? Which is,
yep,
yeah, and cleaning up all of her stuff, taking the car back, taking the computer back to the boss, all that kind of stuff, cleaning out the apartment. All that is a lot of work for someone who's also just experienced a devastating loss. Loss of a sibling, someone you didn't expect, obviously, to pass at the age of 50.
no,
And
yeah,
then the awkwardness of, how she died and people asking how she died. I mean, I have found, especially when it's someone who's younger, people are like shocked, like, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" They're thinking
yeah, oh yeah,
accident. They're thinking, oh my goodness." And I think people aren't expecting to hear something kind of controversial where then I would imagine most people would kind of back off like, "Oh, okay, well, sorry I asked that question." But I honestly, Joan, I would be quite upset. I'd be angry myself. And I know I shared with you that my first husband committed suicide and I was angry.
yes.
And I think in my case, he was one that made a choice. We can go into all kinds of conversations about why people feel they need to commit suicide. And your sister, she made her choice, right? And
She did.
did she think she was going to die? Probably not. But I mean,
No.
it's one of those things where if you had avoided this thing, this would not have happened. So I can understand the anger. How do you, even 5 years later, how are you dealing with that without letting it, kind of eat you up inside?
Um, well, at first, just to back up a little bit, I threw and mostly because my parents were just devastated. And so, and her death was, of course, when somebody dies like that, and given the strange behavior of her boyfriend at the time when the detectives interviewed him, the detective was going down the road of, could this have been, a homicide?
Right, right.
So he asked for any help I could offer. And, I had her laptop, which I had grabbed from the apartment. Um, and I was able actually to get into it using a password that I remember she had years ago, when she had to look something up on her laptop, and it worked. Uh, to this day, I wish I had never offered to do that, because the photos and the videos and the
Mm,
emails and the writings, all of her journals. My mother absolutely wanted all of her journals. Of course, reading that again, something I'm kicking myself to this day for doing, because it consumed me for a while. It honestly did, because even to this day, I believe that the man she was with either supplied her with the drugs or helped her administer them, because my sister was not known for being a flexible athlete. She was
mhm.
the curvy girl, and I'm just trying to think of the logistics of how she did it. I still, to this day, do not believe that he was an innocent in all this, but he was an attorney. Um, I did find out he passed away last year, which I'm honestly happy about. And so I was trying to help in the investigation. I even went to the point of making a complaint against him, filing an ethics charge against him with the Washington State Bar. And I provided them all kinds of evidence. That turned out to be pretty much a slap on the wrist. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the areas where, I thought maybe there could be some answers. I'm a person who wants answers. And so that's why I participated in helping the police department. In the end, they couldn't find anything that would stick, from a prosecution standpoint. And so her death was ruled an overdose, and which, also meant that one of the insurance policies did not refuse to pay out for my nephews, because that was an exclusion. But yeah, I mean, I guess going back to how do I reconcile all this? Wow. I'm truthful with it. I'm not I'm not prettying it up, if you will.
Mhm.
The way she died was, um, it was not what should have happened. But yeah, she made choices. She made conscious choices. She was not a stupid woman. She went into all of this with eyes wide open. Her reasoning for being in this lifestyle was that she found it empowering somehow. And again, I did have some good conversations with my counselor who said, given what you've told me, your sister sounds kind of like a narcissistic personality. And I'm like, yeah, she craved attention, craved being the center of attention, and this lifestyle gave her that. I mean, they would go to sex clubs. She'd be involved in group sex and videoing herself. He would video things. There would be quote unquote events at hotels and even at her own apartment. And so, maybe this was her way of channeling her dreams of being an actress into something. I don't know. Um, I guess the only mourning that I've been trying to find is to mourn the sister I don't feel I ever got to know or have.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I see my friends, I mean, my best friend and her sisters have close relationships. My husband and his sister, they're extremely close. I have friends who I call my sisters, especially my best friend of well over 40 years. I mean, she's my chosen sister, but she's been the one who was there for me. I had a cancer scare back in 2010, ended up having to have a full hysterectomy at the age of 45. And it was my best friend who was there. Um, even when I was saying, I don't need anybody to come visit, she goes, no, I'm going to come there and I'm going to visit and I'm going to serve you wine and just be there. And, those were things my sister never did because she was very self-centered. I mean, it was one of the reasons for her divorce. But yeah, I mean, just where is that sweet spot, if you will, when it comes to grieving somebody who died under circumstances like that, when there's still all that anger and those images in my mind. I mean, still to this day, if there's a movie or a show and it involves BDSM and all of that, I turn it. I can't watch it. It all comes back to me.
Yeah.
My husband has even said, I do think you have some degree of PTSD. I don't know about that, but
No,
um
I would agree with that completely. I would. I know it, and I'll just give you a completely different example, but my mother and I did not have a very positive relationship. She was a woman who should never have become a mother. And when she was dying from cancer, I didn't have much contact with her. I had as bad as, I mean, just I didn't really have a relationship with her. So when she died, I did not have that, what people would say that normal, which I hate the word,
mhm.
grief, right? And I had people kind of judge me for that and say, "Well, I can't believe you don't miss, your mother. How is that? How's that possible?" I'm like, "Well, because I didn't have a mother like you apparently did. I had a very different mother." So, it's hard to explain to people when you aren't having what people expect you to have with the grieving process, right? It's like,
Yeah,
why aren't
yeah,
you crying? Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? It's like, well, first of all, grief is very personal. It's very, very personal. How we just deal with grief is different from one person to the next. Not not judgy. So, that's kind of thing. And I think I'll give you just another example with my mom. I actually went through a grieving process of grieving the loss of not having had a decent mom. So it wasn't grieving her, it was grieving what I didn't have, the loss for me, which might be something to look at as just, you're not necessarily missing her, you're missing what you didn't get. And that is,
Yeah, I think that sums it up in that, I always wanted to be the big sister, but I mean, even I remember as a child, even that, she had her tonsils out. I think she was all of maybe 3 and I was 5. And I wanted to bring her popsicles and I wanted to bring her a straw for her drink. And I'd get into the room and she says, go away, and that's just the kind of person she was. And I didn't understand. I didn't know what to do with that. I just kept trying, kept being there, like when she, was going through her divorce. I mean, I was traveling well over an hour just to go sit with her in court. She decided to represent herself. Um, I'd go there and just sit with her in court just to be there. And, so yeah, it was a very difficult relationship. But yeah, I think what I'm trying to mourn is, what I didn't have.
yep,
What I wished I had. The story I wish I could tell, I guess.
yes,
I don't want to tell the real story. It's not fun. It doesn't serve me. I wish I had a more bright story to tell. And I'll acknowledge the things that were positive about her. She was incredibly smart, a brilliant writer, a talented designer. She was very good at her job, had a great sense of style. Um, but that's about all I can find. I mean, she was horrible to my parents.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My mother kept trying to understand, trying to be there, all of that. And, again, that's another thing that's hard is knowing that she treated my parents like that after, she broke their hearts a million times and they were still there. Um, so that was hard knowing that, my mother said things like, I just want to smell her one more time. When I was going through her apartment, her closet, I mean, she had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of clothes. She loved fashion. And my mom said, bring me something that smells like her perfume,
Hmm.
you know? So, it's just the little things like that. And, I'll get there someday, I think. I don't know how. I guess I'll never, I guess acceptance is the wrong word because you have no choice, right? Somebody dies, no matter how, you have no choice to accept it. I have, and I've been, I was helped take care of my father-in-law when he did, we had him do hospice in our home. He died a couple years ago, and as they say, it was a good death, right? He was happy, satisfied with his life, knew where he was going. Um, he was safe, quiet, warm under our roof, and I think that's the way it should be whenever possible. I've had friends pass away, and I cried and cried and cried until I had a migraine. I mean, I was able to let it out. To this day with my sister, I still have not been able to do that. Maybe I never will.
And that's another thing I was just going to bring up is as you maybe never will. I mean, my mother passed away in 2012. I have to this day to shed a tear over her. I
Mhm.
can I can like Mother's Day is one that's hard for me. I can shed a tear over not having had a good mom, which I guess relates to her, but it doesn't really mean I miss her. Doesn't mean that I miss who she was and what she did or do. It means that I missed what I think and to some extent what she could have had too if she'd had a good relationship with her
Yeah.
children. I think
Yeah,
she
well, yeah, exactly.
so there's that. And I mean, to speak to your parents, I mean, I can only imagine what that's got to feel like. I know you're a parent as well, to know that you had this relationship with your child who's now no longer here and not being able to reconcile that, whatever term you want to use to heal that, and the other person's gone. As a parent, I can't even imagine how difficult that would be for them. So my heart goes out to them for that part too.
Yeah, I mean, it breaks my heart every time my mother will say, "I never got to touch her one last time."
Yeah.
I, because again, my sister died in a different state and all they have is her ashes. And, it's not fair. But life isn't fair. I mean, yeah, I think that's where the anger, honestly, I mean, my sister could have said whatever she wanted about me. I was used to it, but I guess where the anger lies is I even told my mother recently, several months ago. I said, "I'm angry because I feel like she stole your sparkle."
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I completely understand that.
Yes.
How about her? Are her kids doing okay these days? I mean, what are
Yeah, actually, they're doing quite well. Her oldest, he's my first nephew. He- Her oldest and I have a very close relationship. We always have. Um, he's going to be graduating college in May, and looking forward to a bright future. Double major, very smart guy, um, quick wit. I mean, I adore him. He and his mom were on the outs. Were estranged when she died. Had already moved out. Um, he moved out when he was 17, and
Mm,
she allowed it. Yeah, but again, it was her very, very strong personality, pushing him, pushing him, pushing him. And he's being a teenager and she's wanting control. Uh, and he could have a sharp tongue, but he was raised under that. So, yeah, I've had some talks with him. He comes to me for advice, which I'm grateful for. And he's very, very close with my parents, and he's close with his own dad. His dad is terrific. Um, so I think he's going to be okay. I mean, my sister was not both of her sons are adopted. She had fertility issues. Um, and I've even read in her journal that she had some regrets about having children
mm,
because she wasn't sure that she says that she did it to make her husband happy because she thought she should.
right.
Uh,
Okay.
but it was her husband getting up at 3 in the morning before his long commute, to make lunches for the kids and all that while she was still in bed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I think she had a difficult time, um, whereas her ex, he jumped right into being a parent. It's all he ever wanted. She found it harder to bond. Um, she was all about how, dressing them in cool clothes and buying the most expensive gadgets and furniture and this and that. I don't know if she had that mothering bone. I really don't. I think she tried. Um, I think she loved them as best, in the way that she knew how. Um, but, I think it's sad that, she died with still being estranged with her oldest. Um, Her youngest, very close to his dad, very close to my parents. But it's hard to tell what kind of a relationship they had because he was so immersed in video games. It was to the point where it was rather frightening because he just wouldn't communicate.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that his dad did make sure that both the boys got some
That's good.
pretty
Yeah.
extensive counseling after her passing. So I was grateful that he did that. And his current wife, he remarried not too long after he and my sister split up. And actually, those two flew in the day after we found out to help clean out everything and take the youngest home with them. And so I have to give kudos to them because they have provided a safe place for those
Oh,
boys.
that's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to
Yeah,
hear that. Your story is a
it's
hard one.
different.
A hard one. So I want to ask you, like, if we had somebody listening to this today and they're dealing with some kind of a similar grief, so complicated, hidden, unresolved, however you want to phrase that,
Mhm.
would you have, any thoughts to share, or if they know someone who's going through that, and I don't have any idea how to support you because I don't even know what to do. What might you say to someone like that?
I would say make sure you get counseling. Make sure it's with someone you really trust. I know that helped a lot. And I think being honest. I think living with any kind of denial about what happened, if it was a death under very odd or disturbing circumstances, be honest about it. It's not your shame to hang on to. I don't feel any shame about this. I wish she had lived her life in a slightly different way so that she'd still be alive. But at the same time, I guess I'm a realist in that she made her choices. I don't think they were great choices, but they were her choices. And maybe so I think, yeah, just be really honest with yourself and honest with your feelings. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that my husband is my rock. He's had me through hell and back, and um, I've been able to be very honest about my anger, my resentment, my regrets. And honestly, if I were to do it all over again, picking up the pieces of her life, cleaning up the mess she left behind, I don't know if I would have done all that, Christine.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. I I've had people say, "Why would you put yourself through that?" And I thought it was the right thing to do at the time, but maybe I just would have left the apartment be. Let the let the landlord figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, especially during COVID, there was all this stress over that. I don't know, like reading her journals, getting involved in the kind of the forensics on her computer, her laptop. I don't know if I would have done that again.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a
it's
good.
like I know too much, and it's stuff that I've said to my husband, I've said even to my mother, I wish I could find a hypnotist who could just erase
Yeah.
that segment of things for me so that I don't have to see those images in my head. I don't have to, feel my heart beating faster and you feel anxious when something comes on TV, related to BDSM. I really, I wish I could erase it. I can't, but I wish I could. So yeah, counseling number one, and don't be afraid to just speak it as disturbing or, oh, what's the word? I mean, not everybody is comfortable talking about BDSM and
Sure.
that whole rabbit hole. Um, but you have to just be willing to speak it.
Yeah. And I like
And
your point of finding, counseling, yes, but also do you have people in your life that you feel safe with, that you
oh,
can share these things with?
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm
They,
very fortunate.
yeah, they don't have any idea, but they're here, they're there for you, and they're listening to you, and they're comforting and supporting you, even though obviously they can't fix this. I mean, this is not, this is
Right,
just
this ain't fixable. And I've even had very, very honest conversations with my own mom, and just telling her, "Ma, I'm here for you. I know that your grief is different because this is your child." And but I have said to her, "I still haven't cried. I'm still angry. I'm figuring it out, but at this point, I'm not there yet." And my mom has said, "I understand. I get it. She could be awful to you." So, the family unit, we're good. My brother doesn't talk about it much, but my brother and my sister were not close. There was definitely the age difference, but um again, my sister was a force of nature. Good, bad, or indifferent, she was a force of nature. And my brother just didn't know how to reconcile all of
yeah,
that. So, but my brother and I are extremely close. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at today.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, thank you for giving, a platform for, yeah, grief is not always straightforward. And man, it can be messy as hell sometimes. And this
yeah.
is one of those times.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Joan, thank you so much again for joining me today. I very much appreciate you sharing such a sensitive story. I'm going to guess that I'll be getting emails from listeners who've heard you and want to let me know how much it's helped them. So I appreciate you coming on.
I hope so.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Good Grief. We hope that stories shared today have inspired and empowered you on your own journey of resilience. If you want to dive deeper into the themes of trauma, tragedy, and survival, be sure to check out my memoir, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival. In this book, I shared my own raw and honest experiences, offering insights and strategies for overcoming life's toughest challenges. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or listen to it on Audible. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful stories to light and spread a message of hope and resilience. Stay tuned for more incredible stories on our next episode. Until then, remember, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and good grief.